Hello and a good morning, good afternoon and a very good evening to you, for good and wonderful people of the tube. Hope today, hope you're feeling grand and all is well in your world. Hello there everybody. Today people of the tube, you join me on a John Frusciante 2006 tone hunt. What I mean by that is I'm trying to hunt down the tone he had during the Stadium Arcadium. And funny enough, I've been doing it off camera and I thought, why are you not filming this, Dave? So here we are, but I'm not getting anywhere. But I am, but I'm not. So what I'm using at this point in time is the Katana Artist Mark III. The chorus is not in the loop, so we're not using that, but I'm using the WH10, basically Californication board minus the chorus. Miking up the SM57 and Mr. White there. And it sounds pretty close, but it's not quite right. Like, for instance, like I'll show you now. This is John playing Scar Tissue at the AOL sessions. And it's a really, really good, clean, isolated, because I'm after his kind of live sound. It's a really good, clean, isolated idea of his tone. You know, it really gives you a good idea of his sound. It sounds like this. The sound I've got is this. And what's getting my goat is, it sounds okay, but there's a mid-range to the Katana that I can't EQ out. Like, it's definitely in the ballpark, and if you heard it without a comparison, you'd be like, sounds like John. But when you hear it in comparison to actually him playing, you're like, I mean, I'm not helped by the fact of, if you look at John's Marshalls on that AOL footage, he's running 2 amps, he's running his Jubilee and his Major, and there's also 3 microphones on the cabs. So there's 1 microphone on the Jubilee, and then there's 2 on the cab that's running the Major. There's also 1 on the far cab as well, but that's for his slash rig, which he doesn't use in that session. So it's not helped the fact of, you've got 3 signals there. It's definitely been EQ'd. You can hear it's definitely been EQ'd. So what does it sound like in the room? Don't know. Because sadly, I wasn't there. But I'm trying to nail that sound, you know what I mean? I'm trying to kind of get it as close as I can. And yeah, I need to work a bit better at it. But I think what I'm going to do, people of the tube, is I'm going to move away from the Katana. I'm going to go to the MG, because to be honest with you, I've always thought the MG is the closest amp I have when it comes down to John's tone. Now, the Katana gets really, really close. The CL120 gets kind of close. Stuff like, the Bassman does a pretty good job when you run pedals through it. The valve state there, that does a really good job of John tone. But I've always felt the MG is the amp I have that's closest to that John tone. So I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to re-rig everything up, and I'm going to try and do it on the MG instead and see what it sounds like. So give me a minute. I'm going to rejig. Okay, Pooper Tube. So we're into the MG now. So we're going from the MG, WH10, MXR Phase 90, Boss Fuzz, and then DS2 into the Strat. Just going to record that and see what that sounds like, because that sounds better. That sounds more like it. It's got less of that kind of mid-rangey bark that the Katana has, but the Katana, it could be the speaker that's doing that, because John uses the Celestion G12 T75s, and they're a really specific sounding speaker. The Katana's Wazacraft speaker and its standard speaker have a very strong mid-range. We're going through Marshall MG speakers here, which kind of sound like the Celestion the G12Ts, but the 75s, but not quite, but close. So I'm gonna record this and we'll see what this sounds like. Okay, so I've just imported the MG. I'm just gonna drag it in and have a listen to this quick, see how it works in comparison to John's tone. So I've got it set up in Final Cut Pro. I'll show you quick. So you can see I've got Final Cut Pro here, where I've got basically down here, there's John and then there's me. So hey up, let's have a listen. It's close, but it's not quite right. Again, I'm thinking it's speaker people tube, because speakers are such a big part of sound. If you don't have the right speaker, you're never going to get the right sound. It's really is that simple. It's painful to know that, but it really is that simple. It's close, but it isn't close enough. Here's an isolated bit. So, it's kind of like crunch time, really. What do I do? Do I keep trying to... Well, I know I'm not going to be able to edit out that frequency. There's a frequency in the MG, and there's a frequency in the Katana that I can't get rid of. I mean, I'd probably be able to get rid of it with the Katana if I went into the Tone Studio, but I don't want to do that. And like I say, it sounds close enough for government work when you're in the room with it, you know what I mean? And when you mic it, it's only when you use like direct comparison to John's tone, you're like, oh, crikey, you know, and it's what I always say, you can only ever get about 75% close to these people anyway, but I want to get more. So I need to get Celestian G12s. How am I going to do that without absolutely destroying everything? I don't know. Oh, frustrating. I'll be back, people tube. We need to move rooms. We need to go downstairs. So I can get to the G12s. The G12s are normally in like 1960 standard cabs and JCM 900 cabs, which is what John used around this period of time. So I'm going to have to go downstairs. I'm going to have to plug into one of my JCM 900 cabs, probably my Magic cab, and we'll go from there. Because, like I say, the speaker is so important, and John's using B cabs in this footage, and B cabs do sound different to A cabs. So, yeah, we can do this. So I'm going to move an MG downstairs, and well, I'll reset up all the mics and stuff like that, and then we'll go from there. YouTube, we are set up down here now. So, got the MG pedal board, zoom camera down. You can't get the SD card, and yeah, the SM57 on the cab. So we're miking up the top left speaker, and we're miking it just off center. I don't know if I don't know if you'll be able to see. Probably not. It's very hard to see in this kind of white light. We're going to set up the amp with. I'm going to put the gain at about 6. Which is 1 o'clock. Turn everything on to 0. No reverb because John doesn't have reverb. And we're going to have it like that. That's where we're going to start. It might change. One of the reasons, because I'm sure some people ask why you're not using the Chorus Symphony. I'm trying to do it without it because people put far too much emphasis, I think, on this kind of pedal to get John's tone. So I'm trying to do it without it. I've never used one of these things before in the past to get that kind of sound. And if I have to use it eventually, I will, but at this point in time, I'm just going without it. So that's where we're going, SM57. Let's do some experimentations, shall we? Let's give it a go. Because like I say, at this point in time, we're into a 1960 lead cab, but it's the same speed. It's basically the same cab as the 900s. And it's a G12 T75 in that top left speaker, well, in the entire cab. So, yeah, let's give this a go. Let's see what we can do. That was knackering, that was. Whoa. Sweating now.
I'm sweating now.
Okay, so here we go. I've turned the gain down on the MG to 4, which is 11 o'clock. It just felt a bit too much distorted. This feels a bit better. So, just checking the levels on the zoom camera. So I'm going to set out to record now. Record like a little bit of scar tissue. Already, people tube, that feels more open, less kind of less of that honk in the mid range that the Katana has. But we'll go and have a listen and see what we can do. But I do think it's a speaker thing. I really do. I reckon it's more a speaker thing than it is an amp thing. I reckon if I ran the Katana through these speakers, it would sound right. I don't know. I'm jumping ahead of myself a bit here, but let's go and have a listen. Let's see what we can do. Or see what it says. See what it sounds. Okay, I need to import out now. Hi. So, welcome to my madness. So let's import this. Oh, I don't know, anybody know any good jokes? What it decides? There we go. Whew. Running around the house up and down the stairs is keeping me fit, people with YouTube. I'll tell you that. Right, let's give this a go. So let's drag this in. And then I'm going to chop off the silence at the beginning so we get a nice transition. Let's have a listen. So John first, if it plays. It's there. It just needs a little bit more brightness, but I'll show you it now on the thingy. You can hear the kind of tonality is the same. And weirdly enough, people with YouTube, if you come here, I can't reverse, hang on. If you look at the waveforms, I know this isn't really kind of like, you know, scientific or anything, but this is John's waveform here. This is mine. They're very, very similar. So I think if I boost up the mids a tiny bit on the MG, maybe about 9 o'clock, we don't want to go too crazy because it runs away quite quickly, EQ. But if I boost up the mids to 9 o'clock, we might be in even with a better shout. So I'm going to go and do that now. And let's see how that goes. So the next thing, well, save. Yeah, let me do that. Okay, so back downstairs. Put the SD card back in. So, like I say, I'm going to boost the mids up. I'm not going to touch the treble because, like I say, the treble has a tendency to get bright and nasty and thin. So, where's my guitar gone? It's behind your back, David. Where's the plectrum? Aha! Hasn't disappeared into the nether. So. Yeah, I'm going to put it at 9 o'clock. So it's at 9 o'clock right now. So desperate to turn on DS2 and hear what it sounds like with DS2. So let's record this. Let's go and listen to that and see where we are. Back into the room, Dave's boudoir. So, like I say, we turned the mids up, and the mids on the MG are really, really cool for just adding a little bit of sparkle. They're almost like a presence. Not necessarily a mid-range, but there is mids in there. Let's see what this one does. Because it's close. I mean, on the other one, you could really hear the kind of like, the tonality was very similar, but it was just a bit too dark. It was a bit Californication-y. And we're not after that today. We're after the 2006 era, John. So let's have a listen again. Still needs to be brighter. Yeah, it's still a tad too dark. It's still more Californication era than not. So I'm not going to show you that one because that's, well, you can kind of hear it through the phone. It's not the best recording in the world, but and my computer keeps crashing because it's very old and tired. But I'm going to go it down again. I'm going to turn up the mids to maybe 4. So 11 o'clock, which is very, very high. But it might just be the place. Let's find out. Okay, PuberTube, just recorded that one. So now I've got the mid-range at 4, which is 11 o'clock on the dial. So let's have a listen. Because I have a theory that Californication era is a darker, more distorted tone. And the reason for that being is I think you're hearing more of a Jubilee than you are the major. And I think around By the Way era, you started to hear more of the major than you did the Jubilee. The Jubilee's still there, but you're hearing more of the major sounds. It sounds more like a plexi, even though technically the major ain't a plexi. But it sounds more like that kind of amp. And then when you get to 2006, I still feel the major is dominant over the Jubilee, but I feel the Jubilee's a little bit more in there. I don't know, let's listen to this. I would say it's almost a little bit too thin now. Isn't this fun? This is what I do, or like quite a lot of the time, PooperTube. So to me, that's not bad. But again, I'm not going to show you that one either because it doesn't feel right. I'm going to now back off the mids to 3, which is 10 o'clock. So we've had it at 2, which is 9 o'clock. We've had it at 4, which is 11 o'clock. I haven't tried it in the middle of them, and it could very, very possibly be in the middle of them. So I'm going to go and do that quick, and I'll be back. Okay, YouTube. So I've just recorded that now with the mids on 3 on the dial, so 10 o'clock. So let's import that one, and let's see what that does. Like I say, the Katana, when you're micing up a Katana, or like the MG speaker cabs, they sound close in the room, but the problem is when you A/B it, because a microphone cannot lie and it shows things for what they really are, literally a mirror of sound. It shows it for what it is and shows what it's missing. So let's have a listen to this. So now the mid's at 3. See, now that ain't dark enough. That's too dark. And again, it's never going to be precise. I'm not after exact. I'm after ballpark, and this isn't quite ballpark. Here, have a listen. So as you can hear, it's just a tad too dark. Now we're going to go 3.5 on the dial. Because it's getting into halves now. So it's not 9 o'clock, it's not 11 o'clock, it ain't 10 o'clock. But it isn't somewhere between 9 and 10 because 10 is too dark. So it's got to be somewhere between 10 and 11 o'clock on the dial. So between 3 and 4 on the dial. Because that sounds good, but it's still too dark. It's still very, very, very dark. And again, I've got to make the thing that John's running 2 amps here. There's 3 microphones, and it's definitely been EQ'd. So I am after like an EQ'd sound here already. You know what I mean? This is a mixed and mastered guitar tone we're hearing here, but it is very much John's tone, as we can hear. So let's go 3.5. Okay, PooperTube, I think we might have it. So this is with the mid range now of 3.5. So there is a different. I mean, I've always loved the MG because its EQ is fantastic. Same as the Katana's EQ. It's the one thing I really look into in an amp is a good EQ section. And the MG's EQ section is always really, really good. It's I was going to say the word precise, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But it's very accurate. You know what I mean? You want a bit more of something, you kind of get it, so to say. And it's just a really good EQ section. As long as you don't cane it, you know, anything above 12 o'clock on the MG is just fizz and nastiness. And you never really want to get the EQ that high, especially the treble. That's really bad for you. But the mid-range dial is the one to fiddle with, madam. So also, I've got to account for the fact of, like I say, John's gear has been run through thousands of pounds worth of gear. Mine's running through granted, it's a very good XLR cable, but it's running through an XLR cable, an SM57 into my Zoom camera. So we do have to account for that as well. But for me, this sounds really close. I'm really happy with that one. That one sounds really good. That's where I'm going to leave it for now. So what I'm going to do now, PooperTube, is, because I'm happy with that, I am going to see what it sounds like playing By the Way, because I've got the By the Way isolated guitar here. I want to know how close it is to that now. And I've also got, at the end here, I've got Down in California. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go and record by the way, I'm going to record Danny California, and I'm going to then check it, and I'll be back with you. But like I say, here is, if I don't know if I've already shown it or not, but if I have, then I'm an idiot. I'm doing this video in a very, very funny manner that I don't normally do, so I'm not used to filming it this way. But here's what I just heard isolated for you. So John first, and then you'll hear me. Okay, Pooh Tube, so here's By the Way. Here's Danny California. Okay, so to me, By the Way, he sounds identical, near enough. Like, it's as close as I can get. Now, Danny California doesn't sound anything like. Now, what makes me wonder, again, we've got to think that all these songs have been mixed, EQ'd, and mastered, right? So they're never going to be spot on. I'm after ballpark, and I'm happy with where I've got, especially the By the Way one. Where's that? See, I'm now losing track of who's who. Is that me, or is that John? There's John. There's me. It sounds really close to the By the Way era tone, even more than the 2007. I mean, it sounds close to the Scar Tissue tone from the AOL sessions, which is that kind of sound of 2006. It's a bit brighter, less kind of gainy than the Californication era, because Californication is very, very kind of dark, very distorted. Still my favourite sound, but I thought we'd go for something a bit different. By the Way sounds spot on. To me, sounds spot on. Californication, Scar Tissue sounds pretty much there. Now, Danny California doesn't. And you know why, I think? That sounds like the Jubilee. That doesn't sound like these other sounds. Like, you know, it doesn't have the same tonality. Like, if I, like, it's got more of a kind of it's got that metallic-y kind of clank of the major, but it's more distorted. And when it kicks into the distortion part, which is here, I mean, it's very, 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 very bright. And John's tone doesn't sound like anything like that live. His distortion tone, if you listen to the Chili Peppers live, it doesn't have a great deal of cut. It's a lot darker. So this has been EQ'd to the max to brighten that up. And I think this is the Jubilee more than the major. Because again, in my experience of playing through old style Marshalls, they're very dark. You know, the Major will be a dark sounding amplifier. It won't be a bright kind of modern sound it has at all. It'll be very, very dark. So how I've got the MG set up now sounds like what I would expect a Major to sound like, because it sounds like a Plexi. Even though, like I said, Major's not a Plexi. But it sounds like one of those, like, you know, early 70s Marshalls, where they're really, really, yeah, they're very, very dark, they're very warm sounding things. And I say John never used to use treble on his amps back here. He's only started using treble when he came back for the last time on Unlimited Love. But I think in the Scar Tissue version we've heard, you're hearing more of the Major. By the way, you're hearing more of the Major. And then in Down in California, you're hearing the Jubilee. Almost to a point where I feel it's just the Jubilee. Let's go have a listen again. Because it's got this kind of... it's got this sound of a Jubilee. Like the mid-range is very ripe for a Jubilee. It's not necessarily a Plexi thing, and you can hear that in the comparison anyway that I put up. The MG sounds way darker. And again, but it could be the Jubilee, it could be the Major, just EQ to be brighter. Hence why when you get to the distortion, it sounds brighter. One set, people with a tube. Let's get an EQ up here. So I've got an EQ now. So this is on mine. Let's bring up the high end. Okay, so I nearly pressed off record there. So just with a little bit of EQ, I've cut the 1K. I'll tell you what, I'll show you. Just with a little bit of EQ in here, we've got it a lot closer, which I think is exactly what's happened here with the Stadium Arcadium tone. I mean, I think by the way, and the Scar Tissue tone have been EQ'd as well, but I reckon the Danny California tone has been EQ'd even more. So I've cut the 1K, which is always a treble frequency, and I've boosted up the 2 and the 8 just a little bit. And like I say, when you listen to, this is John, and then this is me. And again, this is just quick EQing. It sounds a lot more like it, but John's got a reverb. There's like a room reverb on that, whereas I don't have any reverb at all. But like I say, just with a little bit of EQing, we've got now that Marshall tone to match John's a little bit closer. I reckon I could get it a hell of a lot closer if I spent more time. I think I could get it precise, actually, if I spent a bit more time. But I'm not going to, because that's proven that that's what it is. You know, all these guitar tones are heavily EQ'd, heavily kind of mixed and mastered and sparkly. I would love to be in a room with John's amps to know what they sound like exactly. I mean, I'm lucky enough in the fact I do have a Jubilee and I do have a Plexi. Mine is a Plexi. So I can kind of get an idea of what they sound like, but it still would be interesting. I've never played for a Marshall Major either, but I can imagine they're like a super bass, you know, on steroids, basically. Really clean, but really, really kind of like pokey. And I think that's what we're hearing more of. And again, I've had this theory for ages that like like from Californication onwards, we started to hear more of the Major than we did the Jubilee. The Jubilee is always there, but it's almost like a textural kind of amp. You know, because I think Slane Castle is predominantly Major, Marshall Major. I'd be very, very surprised to hear that the Jubilee was the dominant amp at that gig. It sounds like that kind of like early 70s Marshall tone. I forget what year John's Majors are. They're all from probably different years. But either way, that's proven to me that it's definitely an EQ'd sound. So I'll tell you what, here it is in isolation as it sounds now with the little bit of EQ. So like I say, just with a tiny little bit of EQing and, you know, cutting the 1K out, because the 1K is always iffy frequency, I find, for guitar. And just boosting things a tiny bit. Nothing major boosted there, but just a little bit. We've got it sounding a little bit more like. Again, it's not exact. I'm not after exact. I'm after ballpark. I'm after about 80% or 85% instead of the 75 that I normally settle for. And like I said, I don't normally go for John's later tones like By the Way or State of Arcadiums. I don't really go for them at all. Further Californication, the darker, more distorted tone is my happy place. But I thought, why not? You know, and there is one more thing I want to do before. No, I don't. I'm sorry, I think that I've already done it. Ignore that. But yeah, so to me, that's as close as I can get it. So the MG to me is always going to be the best amp for John's tone for me. Like I know I've got the Jubilee and I know I've got the Plexi, but for me the MG is so good for this. A, the fact you can run it really, really quiet because it's solid state. B, it's consistent. That EQ that I now have for this tone, I will always have. You know, it's not going to be like my Jubilee or my Plexi downstairs where I get the sound and then next day it's completely different. Or it might be the same, and then the power might change and it'll change it completely. This EQ section I've got here, so with the gain on 4, no bass, mids on 3.5, so basically 10, no treble, no consort, volume all the way up, will now give me 2006 and 2002, by the way, era, John tones. Which is really cool to know. So I love that. And I'm very happy with that. And then, like, if I turn the mids down a little bit more to about, like, 9 o'clock, it's kind of more Californication era. It needs to be more overdriven as well. I would say the gain dial needs to be about 5 or 6. Because, as I say, John cleaned up, his sound cleaned up a lot. And again, I put that towards you hearing more of the major, because it's a cleaner amp, you know, it's got that clean sound, and the Jubilee is still there, but it's more of a textural thing. It's still in there, but it's not as upfront and dominant as the major is. Anyway, people of the tube, let me know your thoughts on how close you think I got to these sounds, because to me, I feel that's really close. I don't think it's 100%, but I do think I've gone that extra 5% to 80, like from being at like 75. So I reckon I've got to about 80% closer. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And I'm happy with it. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, people of the tube. What do you reckon? And, just what do you reckon? I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I've been at this now for 5.5 hours. So I'm going to call it a day because my ears are starting to get a bit shot as well. So yeah, anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, YouTube, and I'll see you again very soon for another video. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope this has been somewhat interesting and for what it is. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And yeah, I'll see you again. If you like the channel, like what I do here, please consider becoming a patron at Patreon. Links down in the description box below. Failing that is my guitar course, link in the description box below. But yeah, what I'm going to have to do now, Pooja, I'm not going to do it in this video. Something's just come to mind. But in another video, I'm going to plug in the Katana to the Marshall cab downstairs, the JCM cab. Technically, it's a lead, but they're the same cab. And we'll try and get the Katana to sound like this tone, because I reckon it's the speaker more than anything. I really do. I reckon you need that G12T75 speaker for John's tone. The Katana Wazacross speaker's really, really good, but it's got this mid-range honk. It's kind of like there kind of sound. It's not quite there. And then the MG speaker isn't quite there, but the G12T75, now that is there. So, and you get them in JSM 900 cabs or those lead 1960 cabs. But I think you need that speaker. That's the speaker you need. Because like I say, if you don't have the right speaker, you won't get the right sound. Amp-wise, as long as your amp's a good amp, you know, you'll be away with it. As long as it's got a good EQ section, you'll be away. But speaker, if your speaker's naff, forget it, man. You ain't getting nowhere. So, that made all the difference. Made absolutely all the difference how this tone came out. It really did. That was super cool. And like I say, I love it. I'm really happy about that. I'm really happy where I got to as well. I class that as 80%. I class that as 80%. I am happy with that. And I'm going to try for 85 at some point again when I can, and see if I can get to 85. Anyway, see you again, PeopleTube. Have a great morning, afternoon, good evening, and goodbye now. Cheers. And I don't know why I saluted. We're not in the army.